some years ago when I was a university and artist chaplain in Newcastle in the northeast of England, we took part every year in an event which was designed to open centres of culture to the fun and friends demographic. So younger people who, or at least it was perceived, and maybe this is different in the city of Oxford, don't go into churches and museums so much. The late shows, it was called. And I was working with a young Catholic choreographer called Elliot Smith, who is worth looking up. Actually, he's doing some wonderful work. And we hit on an idea together that was developed by a French choreographer, also a Catholic, Catherine Cadol, called a choreographed tour, parcours chorégraphié in French, where dancers lead you around a building and not by talking, but by movement and gesture, show you the building. And we did both of the cathedrals in Newcastle, and one of them has a very, very splendid bishop's throne. It's a Gothic throne with a kind of canopy over it, which is very pointy and goes up far, far, far up towards the roof. Now, just looking at it, you could say, well, isn't this typical, medieval bishops, power figures? Look what a big chair I've got compared with yours. But the dancers did a very simple thing. When they came in front of a throne, they just did that. A gesture up to heaven. And suddenly I saw that throne. The whole point is that the bishop's authority does not come from humankind, still less from himself, but it comes from God. It comes from heaven. So when we look at the chair, the cathedra of St. Peter, and often you have in lots of churches a statue of Peter on his throne, this is not a power statement. This is not the church just following the way of secular rulers. Rather, Peter has his chair, his authority from heaven. And it means that he is on a rock, as St. Augustine says, the rock is Christ. Peter can be called rock, it's his new name, it's what Peter Petros means, because of the solidity of the power which comes from heaven. The power, the authority of being a good shepherd to the flock. As Peter says in his own letter, it's not about domineering, it's about feeding the flock. It's about giving them that certainty of the hope which was revealed to us in Jesus Christ. This is particularly topical when we seem divided in society between a very wobbly liberalism which seems to give no anchors, even as it defends freedom. But we need anchors, we need steers, we need guides in life. And on the other hand, a rising authoritarianism where power is the number one thing. Law, truth, basic politeness are kicked aside. The authority of Peter is not absolute. The infallibility of the Pope is very particular. It took centuries for the Church to come to a full understanding of the authority which the Bishop of Rome, the Pope, was already exercising from the solidity of the rock, which is Christ. The Pope is, as we know, not infallible in every single thing he says. But when by a definitive act he teaches on faith and morals with all the bishops, in a particular matter, his authority is infallible. This is not about him being big and grand. It is quite simply about Christ's love for his church, the love of the bridegroom for the bride, that he is with us for all times. He will never abandon us. He is our solidity. And we have this visible authority in the Vicar of Christ, the Pope. And this is visible in the solidity of his chair. We pray for the Pope, and we pray also for the unity of Christians. We see so much good in so many other churches. Often there are aspects, you might think of the devotion of Protestants to the Bible. You'd think, well, actually, we could do a bit more of that in our own church. Sometimes there are aspects of the Catholic faith which are lived out better. But without the stability of the authority of Peter, which is the authority of Christ, every single difference of opinion, loads of differences of opinion in the Catholic Church, but without that, every single difference of opinion can become the beginnings of a split. Whereas together, in glorious unity and diversity, in all the diversity of the flock, we can be one. And I think we can also be a model for a civic society which, when it's founded on Christ, can manage a lot of diversity, can manage those on the edge, can carry a level of those who struggle to agree, struggle to believe, but where we are not forced to choose between a wobbly liberalism and a terrifying authoritarianism. Rather, we can all be rooted in the chair of Peter on the rock of Christ.